So with a business, you always want to be a painkiller, not a vitamin. 15 years old, I started coding. The only way to really know whether you have a product that people will pay for is to ask them for money. It launched in April of 2024, and I had 10K in MRR in the first 100 days.
In this interview, you will learn why launching business solo it's a freedom and VC is a trap, a detailed playbook on how to earn $20,000 with pre-sale without having a product, and how validate any AI business idea with super simple framework. Let's go. By the way, if you're looking for a tech partner who can help you build your startup, scale your software, or add AI automation to your routine, just drop me a line. Let's see how I can help you and your business. Hey Gil, nice to meet you. Could you please introduce yourself and maybe tell us just a little bit more about yourself? What was your first job and how your entrepreneurship journey started?
Sure. So, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I was one of those guys who, at 15 years old, I started coding, and instead of delivering pizzas, I got my first job doing software development, and I actually did that through high school. And when I started college, at the same time, I started my own like software consulting business, and it got to the point very quickly where I could either go to class or make like $50 an hour, which for a kid was a ton of money back then. And I'm sort of an entrepreneur as well as a software developer, and I just went down that path, and it was very fun for me because it was always a new challenge. I did that for several years, and then from there, I was a victim of Hurricane Katrina, which was a pretty bad hurricane. Lost everything, and I realized it was an opportunity to kind of start over. I was 21 years old, and kind of the world was available to me, and I ended up moving to New York City, and I connected with Seth Godin, who's like a marketing author and blogger, and we ended up starting a company together called Squidoo. And Squidoo was a social publishing platform. We started that way back in 2005. So that's about the time that YouTube and Facebook were getting started. And we actually grew that to be a $10 million a year business. And I, was the technical co-founder, and, was there from, pre-beta when there were zero users all the way, through, and saw my role change so much within that 9 or 10 years.
Nice, love that. And why you decided to make an exit in your previous business?
Yeah, so Squidoo, was around for, I think it was a little over 9 years, and that is a lifetime in internet time. Ultimately, we felt it was a good opportunity to sort of combine forces with one of our competitors in the space, and we moved on. From there, I did consulting for several years and worked on all kinds of fun projects. But eventually, I'm an entrepreneur, so I got the itch to jump back in and start another company. And this was, several years ago. Cryptocurrency was really growing up, and I connected with a CPA, and we, found an opportunity to create accounting software for businesses that are using cryptocurrency. But when we started, there were no, QuickBooks type tools uh, for crypto, and we sort of pioneered that concept. And that was, my second startup. That one was quite a bit different because Squidoo was bootstrapped, and the second one, we went the VC route. We did fundraising. We raised millions of dollars from investors. I had a team of like 20 people, and it was, quite a different experience from the first one.
And comparing like your first and second business, which business model you like more, like a solo bootstrapping or raising funds?
Yeah, so the first business was definitely bootstrapped. I would say it wasn't solo. I guess we did sort of have some initial funding from the founders, but um, we didn't have any external investors. And I think it makes a business a lot less risky. And this is maybe something that, isn't very intuitive, because you would think if you have $1 million in the bank that your business is de-risked because you're going to be able to make your paycheck tomorrow. But when you actually do the math of, what a VC style return needs to be, and when you consider, just as a simple example, that a when when a bootstrap business hits $1 million in revenue, you're probably taking home some profit and enjoying that business. When a VC backed business hits $1 million in revenue, that's like, it's like you get up to go to work the next day, and it's really nothing different, because your goal is not 1 million, it's 100 million. And you're certainly not giving yourself a raise or a promotion at that point. So if your goal is to like make more money and have lots of options available to you, I would say bootstrapping is less risky. Now, on the other hand, bootstrapping can be risky in the sense that you could work on something and eventually just run out of money pretty quickly if you're not building up momentum that fast. Whereas with a VC backed business, you may have a little bit more wiggle room. And of course, if you make a VC business work, and you do get that $100 million exit, then it's incredible. But it's a lot harder to do that. And the gap between, just raised my first money and $100 million exit is actually a really big gap, and it's hard to get through. And it was honestly a great thing for everybody involved. That company is continuing to be super strong in the space, and it was a brilliant thing, and I was.
Nice, great. But did you have this feeling so you're now
Mhm.
free, so you managed to do this exit?
Yeah. So after having a business where a lot of it became about interacting and managing people on the team, and as well as like external investors and things like that. By the way, I love VC investors. I had great experiences with them. I'm certainly not down on it. I think for the right type of business, it makes a lot of sense. But I was ready to do something different and kind of go back to bootstrapping. This business, I sort of transitioned out of the business when ChatGPT was really first starting to blow up a few years ago. And I was like, wow, this is absolutely incredible. And I have to get on this. And I thought, how far, like, if take my last business, if I had AI when I started that business, I probably would have built it way differently. So, what would I do now if I started a new company and I had AI as my, co-pilot? And so I got really excited about that idea. And then it was a matter of like, what should I build? And I was super obsessed with like finding the right market, because this is something that I did not understand about entrepreneurship for a very long time, is that market is everything. I think it was actually there's a article by Mark Andreessen, I believe. It might be Paul Graham, but I think it's Mark Andreessen, where he basically talks about what's the most important in a startup. Is it the market, the team, or the product? And basically what he reasons is that you can have a bad product and a bad team, but if you're in a good market, you can still win if there are buyers. And you can have uh, a a bad yeah, if you have a good team and a good product but not a good market, then there's no one to buy. So basically, market is everything. And I think that was a key lesson for me.
Nice, love that. And in terms of running your business like 3 times from scratch, maybe is there any kind of like a specific books or articles managed to help you start this journey
Yeah.
from scratch?
Yeah. So my last business, we went through the Techstars Accelerator, which was, uh, that was an experience. It's, 3 months of in person working 12 hours a day, just grinding on your business. And I would say that it was very transformative, learning, how to give a pitch, how to be on stage, how to think about the business metrics in a way that I'd never had to do before, because my previous businesses were less about the business itself and more about me as sort of the, CTO type role, focusing on parts of the business, but mainly the technical parts. So I would say that the Techstars experience was brutal, but also very transformative, and learned a lot from that. But there's no substitute for actually getting out there and doing the work and talking to people. And that can be, taken in a few different ways. But I'm talking about like talking to customers and potential customers, talking to investors. Like even if you have a business that you're thinking about bootstrapping, if you think about how would I pitch this to an investor, and you understand the parameters that they're looking for, it can help you make your business idea stronger, because you may not be thinking about certain angles, but when you have to go to present it in a way that makes sense for an investor, that can be sort of like a forcing function. So that I think is like really key. And then reading stuff from folks like Paul Graham is always super inspiring. Like the I mean, he's literally at the center of all the startup stuff happening. And then there's also indie hackers out there, like Peter Levels is pretty inspiring. Just seeing the stuff that he's accomplished. So I, but at the end of the day, I think it's more about like less reading and more like communicating with the people who you would be dealing with in your business.
Nice, love that. And many people are struggling to start their first business
Hmm.
solo, but you are a great example like of technical co-founder or CTO. Yes, of course, you have a previous experience with exit, but at the same time, you are a technical founder. How you decided to start your third business, basically solo, without like a huge marketing background? Because as you mentioned, you were on a CTO
Hmm.
kind of side in previous businesses. So, what was I don't know, the final straw or the final motivation to start the business solo and jump into like marketing and development at the same
I
time?
turned on the camera and hit record, and I started recording some videos and posting them to YouTube. Really just, very raw style of me talking about my ideas, and, thinking through like different tests I was going to do, and thinking through different experiments, and talking about conversations I had with potential customers of products that I was thinking about. And that didn't get like a wide audience, but it forced me to like show up every week and think about, what have I done today that is worthy of sharing. And I got more and more into YouTube. And I was really interested in this idea of faceless YouTube channels, where, the idea is you set up a small team, you get them going, you can create videos and sort of have this running, and you can make serious ad money from YouTube. So I started to do this and quickly realized that, hey, it's actually not that easy to get one of these teams together. I was really having trouble with script writing. So then I did what anyone would do these days, which is I tried ChatGPT. And, again, this was in early 2024 when ChatGPT was out there, but it definitely was not okay for writing YouTube scripts. And so I realized, hey, this is actually an opportunity for me to sort of take all of my experience as a software engineer and to create something really good for YouTube creators. So that was my idea, and I think a lot of people at that point would just go and build it. And what I've learned from doing this for way too long and making too many mistakes is that is absolutely the wrong thing to do. I knew that I had to build an audience next. So I went on X and I started a brand new X account with zero followers, and I started following people in the YouTube space, and joining in on conversations, understanding what things people were talking about, and also consuming like every piece of information about this space as possible. Because I was starting from zero. I had no connections. I had no experience in this industry that I could use as like authority. And eventually I started seeing some opportunities where I could add value using my experience as a software developer. And pretty quickly I built up like a couple thousand followers on X. I was doing some viral giveaways and things like that. And I launched an email list, and I was still doing this like kind of build in public type of thing where I was talking about my idea. And every week I would email the list, and I would try and have some sort of deliverable that would be something interesting to the people who were starting to follow the stuff that I was putting out. And then people would reply to those emails, and I would talk to them about my idea and refine it. And eventually I got to a point where I was like, okay, I feel like this is an idea that has legs and is something that is worth doing. So I then got into what I think is probably the most important phase of like a bootstrap startup, which is the validation.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about validation just a little bit later. And so, as far as I understand, you created the product first, some kind of like a MVP. Then you started to generating your own audios, right?
No, I didn't build the product at all. So what I did was I built little throwaway tools and data analysis things that I saw would be useful to people that would be in my target audience. But it wasn't actually the product that I intended to sell. And I think when you take time and create something of value for people, then that's when you're able to start developing a little bit of trust. So I was willing to do that in the early stages.
Gotcha. So, can we say that the first valuable outcome that you created for your audience was just like a bunch of small useful tools, right?
Yeah, it was a bunch of small useful tools. It was things that were targeted to my audience, not necessarily the product I was building, but sort of things I could put together in a day that would be useful for people.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And what took the most of your time during this validation process?
Well, I think you have to be a little bit patient with the part where you're honing in on what your idea actually is, because as a builder, you have this problem that you're fixated on, but you're probably even more fixated on the solution to that problem, and that's actually very dangerous, because if you are too focused on the solution, then you lose sight of whether this is a problem that people are actually are willing to pay to solve. So with a business, you always want to be a painkiller, not a vitamin. And a vitamin is something that you can take and it's good for you, but a painkiller is something you absolutely have to have. And of course, you want to sell a painkiller. So the only way to find out if that's what you have is, number one, to talk to people and to refine your idea to make it better, make it what other people want, not what you want. And then number two, to ask them for money.
Nice. So, what was the process of validating? So, for instance, finally, you created a product. Basically, you decided to validate your idea. And then did you just manage to send an email to all your email list, or you started DMing to your audience? So just a little bit more about this, like a first step that you did.
Yeah. So I did not want to spend months building the product before I knew whether people would be willing to pay for it. The standard startup advice is to go ask your friends or show as many people as you can your idea and get feedback on it. And a little bit better version of that advice is to also ask people, great, I'm glad you like it. How much would you be willing to pay for it? And the advice usually stops there. And that's a big problem because it's actually quite dangerous, and it might actually make things worse. Because what you hear is validate. If someone says, yes, I would be willing to pay $50 a month for this product. So you hear that and think that you have something great on your hands and you should just spend the next 3 months going to build it. And so let's say you do go build it. Then 3 months later, no one's heard from you because you've been very busy building. And then you come out and say, hey, guess what? It's live. Let's go ahead and buy it now. Here's the link. And they say, oh, yeah, I would pay $50 a month for it if I didn't already have this other software that does this other thing too. Or I would pay $50 a month for it if I, wasn't going through a divorce right now and can't afford it. Or I would pay $50 a month for it once it has this integration that, by the way, I'm the only person asking for this integration. And that will happen to you every time. So the only way to really know whether you have a product that people will pay for is to ask them for money. And so here's how I did it. It was a 7-day launch plan, but before you are ready to launch, you have to work backwards and think about what is a successful validation for you. For me, I wanted to have like $20,000 in the bank, which would support me for 3 months as I build this thing. And that would, if I got that, then I would feel comfortable dedicating that amount of time to working on it. So from there, I was able to figure out and what would be a price that would be so cheap that they, it's an insane value that they would say yes to it right away without even seeing it. And from there, I was able to figure out how many customers I would need to get to my target, amount of money, which for me was like $20,000. And for me, I worked out that it was like 50 customers. So from there, I had to think about what size audience do I need in order to hit that. And eventually I built up an email list of over 1,000 people. And I thought, because my list was so warm and I was, actively working every day, every week to build trust, that I could get 5% of people to convert. And so that was how I knew it was time to monetize this thing, is once the list grew to a point where I felt like, hey, if I run this sale now, that I'll actually succeed. So that's exactly what I did. And I set up this email sequence that was a very, heavy-handed, persuasive, exciting email sequence, because no one's going to be excited about your idea unless you make them excited. And I think a lot of builders have trouble with that. Like, they don't want to be too promotional, but you do have to get people excited. So for 7 days, I sent an email every day talking about a big benefit to the thing I was going to build. And yes, I talked about features some, but it was mainly about not only what the person using it would benefit, but how it would transform them. So really emotional level stuff. And, by the end of the 7 days, it was like this big, exciting thing where everyone knew that this was a launch day and they were going to finally learn what the offer actually is. And so at this point in this week, you've got to be everywhere. You've got to be on email. You've got to be on social media. and posting videos and really working hard to get the visibility. Because again, if you're not doing it, no one else will. And so for me, the way I did it was I wanted to incentivize the early adopters. So 50 customers, the first 10, I needed to give them a price that was so crazy low that I would probably lose money on them in the long run. But that was to build hype and FOMO. So I did that. And every 10 customers, the price would go up. So you had this ladder and you knew you had to get in. And I launched this within a few days. I sold out the entire thing, and that was my initial validation. There was one key part of selling it out, which I think is super important, is that especially if you're starting from zero and you're selling to people you don't know, you've got to have that trust there. And one way that I did it, aside from putting out lots of videos, was to offer a money back guarantee. So I said, look, you're going to buy this thing. I'm going to take 60 days to build it. And if I don't build it in 60 days, you can ask for your money back. And by the way, I'm going to give it to you after 60 days and you're going to have 2 weeks when you can play around with it. And if you're still not happy with it, then you can ask for your money back. And, combined with like the cheaper price plus the FOMO of I've got to get in now because this is a deal that's never coming back, and it really never came back like that. Um, you know, that was a killer combination.
Nice, love that. And basically, you just created a landing page, an offer. You warm your audience before that, and in the launch date, did you just put the offer in front of them and ask like a pay, or you managed to do some kind of onboarding where you explained the product to people?
Yeah, I didn't have any sort of like webinar or VSL type of call. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have, because I've seen those work really well. Even recently we've done some ones like that have gone well. But it was really just a landing page and a whole lot of emails that people got, and plus some DMs and some outreach. But that was mainly it. And the landing page again, it was really the copy was super important. The writing, to really hone in not on the product features, but on like how their life was going to be different with this tool.
Nice, love that. And regarding your product, so you're mentioning that writing YouTube scripts 10x faster. And who is your target audience? Is this like creators who creating like their own products, or it's like a faceless videos? Tell me just a bit more. And especially, I suppose when you're starting selling your product, you learn a lot, and maybe there's like hidden levels of the audience.
Yeah. So there's two types of audiences that really use scripts. So, a Mr. Beast type of channel is not going to use scripts. A podcast type of channel is not. But there are the faceless channels, as you mentioned, which are like documentary type of videos usually. And then there's also like people who are building a personal brand. Maybe they're creating like educational content and they want their content to be super polished, so they're doing scripts as well. And those are, basically the two segments of my audience. The tool that they need is mostly the same, but there are some differences in what they're trying to accomplish with their channels. I
Okay, great. And what was your tech stack when you decided to build your third startup?
Yeah, so I started out my career, way back in the early 2000s with PHP. And people look down on it now, but it was actually great at the time. And over time, as the JavaScript frameworks became so popular, I of course jumped on that bandwagon, but I really grew disillusioned with many aspects of it. And I I don't really want to get too much into the technical parts of that, but I ended up going back to PHP because there's this great framework called Laravel, and it is just a joy to use. There's a very healthy community around it. It doesn't have some of the same issues that I saw in the JavaScript world. And so yeah, it's just a very typical, what we call like a LAMP, Linux, MySQL, and PHP application with Laravel. Yeah, I'm using Stripe obviously for accepting credit cards. I was using Plausible for analytics for a long time, but I recently moved over to DataFast. I see a little bit faster evolution in the product itself. And the other aspect of this is like this is an AI tool. So the biggest cost to the business is running the AI models that I'm using from several different providers. And we're not generating like single chat messages or emails. We're generating long form content. So it's not super cheap.
Nice. And going back to your product, so you put yourself in a strict borders that you have to deliver something within 2 months. And when was your like the mo? I will ask a question. So when you started your product, you put yourself in borders regarding like 2 months, and many developers are trying to make everything perfect. They're trying to over-engineer things, and like they cannot stop doing this one. So what was your like stopping point to do this over-engineering and stop adding more and more
Yeah.
features?
Well, now that we have vibe coding, it's even more tempting to just keep adding feature after feature. And the traditional advice around MVPs is if you aren't embarrassed of your first product, then you're taking too long to launch. So that's something to keep in mind. But I would say that the most important thing is to understand like what is the job to be done with your software? Like what is the like one key workflow, and make sure that workflow is perfect, not in terms of every bell and whistle, but in terms of if someone gets access to this today, they can actually put it into their process and use it. And maybe they have a million feature requests, but it is something they can actually use. So that is the stopping point. And you've got to just get something that again is people can plug it into their process and it's immediately valuable.
Nice, love that. And when was your first launch date, and what is your current MRR?
So it launched in April of 2024, and I had 10K in MRR in the first 100 days. Again, this was just all by myself with absolutely no previous experience in this industry, so it wasn't like I had an audience before to promote to. And today it's doing over 30K a month, but it's actually generated a lot more revenue, through like one-time sales and an AppSumo campaign that I did, which was actually a pretty huge thing too.
Nice, love that. And what is your plan with your software? Are you planning to grow it, I don't know, for a 50, 100K MRR and then make your third exit, or are you planning it to grow to millions and to do the exit, or you're planning, I don't know, to live with this product for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I'm loving what I'm doing right now, so I have no plans to sell it right now. That being said, like who knows what, is happening with AI. So it would be I think if I decided to sell, it would be because I got really excited about some other idea and was ready to move on. But like I've developed some really good relationships with customers, and I actually really love the space I work in. So no plans to sell. I mean, the goal right now is like to keep growing revenue. Yeah, like you said, 50K a month I think is right around the corner. And from there, hopefully we can get to 100, 200K.
Nice, love that. And you mentioned like a 50K as your like a kind of like a small North Star. But let's talk about sales and marketing a little bit more. Can you share your marketing flow a bit more in details. So are you using right now still like a Twitter a lot as your audience, or like you using mostly tools like AppSumo? Give me just a bit more like a meat, a bit more juice details.
Yeah, the thing about Twitter is that you've got to show up every day. You know, you've got to be there. You've got, if you don't tweet, you're not going to get attention. It was hard for me to like balance, you know, continuing to tweet every single day. And so I started, you know, looking for other avenues. I have a lot of previous experience with SEO. And so I decided early on that I was going to invest in that. I believe that I wanted to build a business where I could wake up every day and acquire new customers without me having to slave over a tweet or slave over a TikTok video or something. And SEO is a great way to do that. So I invested a lot into SEO. I'm doing programmatic stuff so that when people search for things that are relevant to my field, you know, even just a handful of searches a month, it's bringing traffic to the website. Over 30,000 visits a month to the website coming from Google. So it's just, you know, really big numbers. That's been helpful. In addition to that, I would say, you know, email is great because like when people come in, you know, they maybe are not ready to buy right away. So keeping them in the loop and having something for them helps a lot with conversion. And then lastly, if you build a good product, people are going to share it. They're going to want to share it. So affiliate program or not, just making a product that people enjoy sharing, I think is a huge thing. And that would actually be the main ways that I've promoted subscriber.
Nice, love that. And regarding the SEO, did you manage to start these things from scratch? I mean, like, have you created your SEO campaign solo? And what was the main key point? Is this like a programmatic SEO, or it's like writing articles for your blog
Mhm.
using AI, of course, I suppose, or like you put a lot of attention on domain rating and purchases
Yeah.
backlinks?
Um, so a lot of people tend to focus on the technical aspects of SEO because it's easy to just create a checklist of things you have to do. But I don't think that that moves the needle that much. What moves the needle is like content, lots of content, and understanding what terms people are searching for and creating content about that. Not necessarily to like stuff keywords, but to really understand what the market actually is like. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that I had a lot of content on my website about the product itself. That's the first thing. And then it was like, well, what are the things that people are having trouble with before they get to my product? And, you know, I started, you know, I opened up the Ahrefs app and was looking at, you know, different search keywords, and I started to find some patterns of things that people would search for, like you know like Minecraft YouTube video ideas or bootstrapping YouTube video ideas. Like I found certain patterns like that, and then I built some tools internally to just generate a lot of content focused around those things. Now, the key here was not just to generate a lot of content, but to do it in a way that was like beyond just what the LLM could, the AI model could come up with on its own. So that means mixing in news, mixing in, you know, actual data from the industry in a way that the chatbots don't normally have, and that makes the content useful and interesting. So that's the key to a programmatic SEO campaign. But all of that is wasted if you don't get backlinks, because you know backlinks are like the follower counts of SEO. And if you don't have any followers, people aren't going to trust you. And in this case, if you don't have backlinks, Google is not going to trust you. So the first thing, if you're building a software tool, is to like go to every startup directory, software directory out there and just submit. It takes also, like, I think Product Hunt gives a backlink. So, places like that, you want to get out there. You want to have a personal blog that you can link from as well. And you want it linked from your social media accounts. Just everywhere you can get a backlink. If there's partners you work with, like, don't be afraid to reach out and be like, hey, let's like link to each other. And if you talk to someone on their marketing team, they'll get you. They'll understand the value of it. So you kind of have to like really sweat for those backlinks. Like, they don't come easy.
Nice, love that. Okay, and what is the I think the most expensive fuck up over the last 12 months that you have?
Most expensive fuck up I had the last 12 months. I mean, I've run some unprofitable ads, that's for sure, like testing things out. But I consider that, okay, because if you do figure out a profitable ad strategy, then it's like game over for your business. It's like not game over, but it's like that can help you scale so much. So I'm okay with that. I did have a very rare for me technical thing where I was like trying out a different piece of infrastructure and accidentally ran up a $7,000 bill. And I was pretty pissed about that because the tool didn't even give me great notifications that this was happening. But at the end of the day, it was my fault for even using it. And I would say that was a pretty expensive mistake that I still don't forgive myself for.
Nice, that's great. Okay, and could you tell me just a bit more about one of the most successful cases that one or few customers that using your platform have?
Yeah, I have a one customer testimonial where he said I got monetized in the first video that I created using the scripts from your software, and now I'm making like 10K a month. I've had another guy say I've made $24,000 from subscriber YouTube scripts, and multiple other people saying they're making thousands of dollars a month with the help of this tool. Now they're putting in a lot of work too, but people are actually achieving their goal on YouTube, which is to get views and to generate ad revenue.
Nice, that's great. And if you can come back in time, would you start the same business or you would choose the different path?
Wow. I think I would actually choose this one. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the more businesses I start, the more I realize like, okay, what is the like limiting factor of certain types of businesses? And that is something I think a lot about now uh, as I always think about new business ideas. So I'll give you some examples. Like in my current company, the product is a very text heavy tool because it's about writing YouTube scripts, it's about ideating YouTube videos. So there's a lot of text. So the product doesn't show as well in marketing content. Whereas if you have a product that generates pictures or videos, like it's going to be so much easier to promote it. That's just one little thing. Another example is like if you plug into a market as it's like fastly growing and you have an integration that is something people can plug right in and start using, then that's going to give you a lot of momentum. If you're in certain industries, like churn is going to be lower or churn is going to be higher just because of the nature of the customer. So that's something I think about a lot with new business opportunities is like, what is going to be the limiting factor here? Like, what about this business is going to be really hard? And I think it's hard. It's hard to like, especially if you're new as an entrepreneur. It's hard to know what those things are. The only way to really know is like to talk to mentors who are older and experienced in business, and that could even be like investor types. they'll know and they can tell you what's going to be the limiting factor. And then you have to decide for yourself, like, am I going to sign up for this? Like, is this the hard problem that I'm comfortable with? Because if it's not, if like if the hard problem in your business is you've got to do B2B sales with like sales demo calls and things like that, and you're a software developer who likes to just sit in a cave and you're not comfortable on video calls, like that's not the business you want to be in, you know? So I think thinking about that is key.
Nice, love that. And you're working a lot with AI at the moment, and probably you see some kind of like additional opportunities where you or I don't know, like somebody else can start a business. Could you maybe share one or two or maybe even more ideas where people can use their like knowledge and start a business tomorrow? Because you see that it's a market there. It's money on the table.
Yep.
Get at them.
Yeah. Um, I would say it's great if you can think of an idea that is within your area of expertise that can help people make more money. Because if you can find a tool that can help people make more money, then it is going to be a lot easier to sell. And you can sell on the fact that, hey, if you plug this in, you're going to double the amount of money that you make. So try and find an opportunity like that as opposed to an opportunity that just solves for efficiency. So efficiency is like, hey, this process was 10 steps, now it's 2. Those problems can be very good businesses, but they're not going to fly off the shelves as much as, you know, something that can actually help people make more money or that empowers them in a way that's just like completely automates what they do.
Nice, love that. Gil, thank you very much for this great interview and sharing your journey.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.